The war didn't end, it changed its shape. The war did not end when the guns fell silent. It only learned how to whisper. On a cold morning in April 1945, as smoke still drifted over the broken cities of Europe, a young American officer stood inside a captured German factory and understood something most of the world would not realize for decades. Germany had lost the war, but its ideas had not. The factory floor was quiet. The machines were intact. Filing cabinets stood open, their contents abandoned in a hurry. Blueprints lay scattered like fallen leaves, designs for rockets, engines, chemical processes, communication systems that were years ahead of anything the United States possessed. Outside, American tanks rolled past cheering soldiers. Newspapers back home would soon declare victory. Presidents would give speeches. Parades would fill the streets. But inside that factory, history took a darker, quieter turn. Because victory was never just about defeating an enemy. It was about deciding who would inherit their power. The Second War begins. By the spring of 1945, the United States officially had only one goal left in Europe: end the fighting and bring the troops home. Unofficially, a second war had already begun. This new war had no front lines, no uniforms, no declarations. Its battlefield was filing cabinets, laboratories, prisons, and refugee camps. Its prize was knowledge. American intelligence officers knew something terrifying. If the United States did not move fast, the Soviet Union would take everything. Hitler was gone, Berlin was collapsing, but thousands of German scientists, engineers, intelligence officers, and military specialists were still alive, and many of them were desperately trying to surrender to the Americans instead of the Red Army. They knew what awaited them in the East. The Americans knew something else. These men, some of them deeply complicit in the Nazi war machine, were sitting on secrets that could define the next century. Rockets that could cross continents, chemical formulas never seen before, early ideas of computers, surveillance systems, and psychological warfare. The question was no longer moral, it was strategic. A quiet order from Washington. The order did not come as a dramatic announcement. There were no headlines, no signatures from the president made public. It came in the form of classified memos, stamped top secret, circulated among a small circle of military and intelligence officials. The message was simple: find them, secure them, bring them to America. Their pasts were negotiable. At first, even some American officers resisted. These were men who had spent years fighting the Nazi regime. Many had seen concentration camps with their own eyes. But the Cold War was already casting its shadow. In Moscow, Soviet teams were doing the same thing, rounding up German experts, sometimes at gunpoint, shipping them east in sealed trains. This was no longer about justice. It was about survival. The men with no country. Across defeated Germany, strange scenes began to unfold. German scientists, who only weeks earlier had worn Nazi insignia, now burned documents, changed names, and rehearsed new life stories. Some hid in Bavarian villages. Some surrendered directly to American patrols, offering knowledge in exchange for protection. Some carried lists, names of colleagues, locations of secret labs, buried archives. American officers listened carefully. Then they made phone calls. Within months, hundreds of former enemy specialists would vanish from Europe, not as prisoners, but as assets. Their records were altered, their Nazi affiliations quietly minimized or erased, their expertise rebranded as vital to national security. The American public would never be told the full story, and that was the point. The birth of a new kind of power. Back in the United States, factories that once produced tanks and bombers faced an uncertain future. The war economy was slowing. Millions of soldiers were returning home.
Politicians feared another Great Depression, but something else was happening behind closed doors. Military research budgets did not shrink, they exploded. New government agencies quietly formed, old ones expanded beyond recognition. Private corporations began receiving contracts worth billions, often without public oversight. War, it turned out, was not just destruction, it was infrastructure, and the knowledge imported from defeated Germany would soon reshape American science, the military, the intelligence world, and eventually everyday civilian life. Rockets would become space programs, surveillance would become national policy, psychological warfare would become advertising, media, and politics. None of this happened overnight. It happened slowly, methodically, and almost entirely in secret. A line that could never be crossed until it was. There were lines America once believed it would never cross, working with former enemies, ignoring war crimes, allowing morality to be overridden by strategy. But fear is a powerful force. Fear of the Soviet Union, fear of losing technological superiority, fear of becoming vulnerable in a world that had just learned how to destroy itself. So the line moved, then it disappeared. By the end of 1946, the United States had not only won the war, it had inherited its enemies, and in doing so, it set in motion a chain of events that would shape the Cold War, the space race, modern surveillance, corporate power, and the invisible architecture of the world you live in today. This is not a conspiracy theory, this is documented history, but it is a history rarely told all the way through. And this was only the beginning.